Man, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome back to the channel. I try to keep a straight face. I try to make these videos serious, but I can never do it. So, you know what? We're just gonna have to roll with it, you know what I mean? Now, in 2018, I actually, towards the end of it, I wanted to do like so many more videos, and I never got the chance to because, you know what, I'll be honest, even like in 2017, I couldn't afford to do as many videos as I could. Buying these phones are super expensive, but I figured, you know what, I'm going to treat this like an investment, and I ended up buying tons and tons of phones during the later part of 2018, and the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge was actually one of them. Now, I think I bought this one in like July or August, and I'll definitely say that this phone still surprises me in a lot of ways. Now, in some ways, it kind of like makes me sad, but I'll go into that in a second. But really, just like the whole lineup of Samsung has really transcended. I mean, looking at the Galaxy S1, even up until like the Galaxy S5, they were kind of known of having like pretty good hardware and all that stuff, and like being a really huge competitor to Apple, and they still are. But look, when the Galaxy S6 came out, I think that was probably one of the most important Samsung phones ever released, because even though it was horrible and I didn't really like it that much, they went from like that plastic build quality to the super high quality glass on the front, glass on the back, like fingerprint sensor, pretty decent one, amazing screen, all of this kind of stuff that even Samsung still uses to this day. So pretty cool stuff. I like it a lot. And the Galaxy S7 Edge was the one right after the Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Let's see how the Galaxy S7 Edge compares in 2019, seeing if it's still worth it, whether you should get something else, and all those different things, man. But starting off with the body, I'll definitely say it is one of the strongest aspects of this phone, 100%. You obviously have the screen on the front, but it kind of peels to the edges. I'm sure you've seen it before. It curves to the edges, and I actually like that a lot. There's a lot of practical reasons why it's dumb, and they kind of switched over to the newer design they have now, but I like it a lot. I like it in the hands. It's completely unpractical though. I'm sure a lot of you who own the Galaxy S7 can testify to that. When you hold it in your hands, you're always accidentally clicking things on the side of the screen. I think it had a purpose, and I think it was cool. But I like what Galaxy eventually did with the S8, where it's kind of like a minimal kind of curve. It's still noticeable, but it doesn't really interfere with your day-to-day use. And I think that's what Samsung eventually learned, and they switched over to the Galaxy S8 and S9 design. But this was a huge proponent to that. And I'll definitely say that the front, I mean, it looks decent and all that stuff, and it still looks pretty good. But when you go to the back, this is the one thing that surprised me. Glass on the back really makes the phone go from like a 5 out of 10 phone to like a 10 out of 10 phone. It makes it feel that much more premium. I hate it though because it's one more thing to break, but honestly, I'm not too salty about it. I really like the way this phone feels overall. Now, one thing I do want you to keep in mind is that if you're getting a phone like this, you're most likely getting it used, and the front fingerprint sensor, the home button, usually is a little bit more wobbly, and that's one thing that I would probably recommend you to go towards a different route instead of getting it directly used, which I'll go into in like towards the end of this video. But one thing, if you're getting this phone used, or if you're going some Craigslist or whatever, definitely feel how the home button feels, because you'll definitely notice whether it's like super shaky, wobbly. You probably want to stay away from it. But that's pretty much it from the exterior of the body. Obviously, you saw the headphone jack on the bottom. You do have a micro USB port. You don't have USB Type-C yet, which does kind of suck a little bit, but it would have probably been better with USB-C. I mean, this thing was released in 2016, so it wasn't even like that old of a device, but you know, I guess we can't really go back in time and change that. Now, like I said, it has a 5.5-inch Super AMOLED display. It's 1440p, and this is also one of the better aspects of this phone overall. The screen is super solid. The PPI is actually 534, or around 534. Very strong pixels per inch. In reality, you're not going to have too many problems with the hardware of this phone in terms of the body. I still think this phone looks super awesome. Obviously, the bezels are a little bit thick on it, but you know what? We all can use a little bit of thickness in our lives, you know what I mean? Now, turning it on, this is probably one of the saddest aspects of this phone, and it's not necessarily sad how you think so. It's sad in a different way. So it started off with Android Marshmallow, but you are able to go fully upgrade to Android Oreo. So it's definitely a decent thing. But one thing that Samsung did was they recently just released their One UI, and obviously Samsung is not going to go and support the Galaxy S7 Edge anymore. But I really wish they could go out and do something like that. Really take an initiative. I mean, this thing got, what, Android 6, Android 7, Android 8, so 3 versions of Android, you know, and some security updates here and there. So that's completely understandable. But I would have still loved to see some type of, you know, initiative on Samsung to kind of, I mean, I like how they're kind of turning away from their TouchWiz UI, because that thing I never liked at all. I mean, they kind of cleaned it out towards the end, but I never liked it, and I'm being honest. But one thing you have to keep in mind, especially with these older phones, is that you are able to root in custom ROM some variants of them. Usually you can't custom ROM all of them, but I would really recommend that. I think I've seen some Android Oreo ROMs out for it. I've seen some Android Pie ROMs out for it too. That's pretty interesting. But I would even be fine with the Android Oreo ROM running on an older phone, because you can always get more features and things like that, and even sometimes install a custom kernel. So I think I've seen some Lineage OS ROMs as well. That's like the new Cyanogen mod. So what I'll tell you is that I will leave some links to the XDA forums down below. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't make any money from them. I just want to do right in this community. Obviously, there's still a subreddit, Galaxy S7 Edge. Definitely go visit that if you're planning on getting one of these. But in terms of software, that's pretty much where we're at. It's already outdated. It's not getting any more updates. But with custom ROMs, it is. It does have the capability. Now, in terms of the performance and the hardware inside of it itself, it has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 on some variants. On other variants, it has the Exynos 8890 octa, whatever that is. Some variants do have a quad-core CPU. Other variants have an octa-core CPU. Really just depends which one you get. And they have the Adreno 530 GPU. And all variants, from what I can tell, all have 4 gigs of RAM. So what I can tell you what those specs mean is that the performance of this thing is still pretty good. I will definitely say it's on the better side of things. So it's definitely not the fastest thing. It still, glitches up here and there. And I think TouchWiz has the biggest problem with that. I think that's the problem with TouchWiz and not necessarily with the phone itself, because with a phone with 4 gigs of RAM, I mean, that's a lot of RAM. Also, I don't know how good the Adreno 530 GPU is. I'm assuming it's on the better side as well. And I can tell you that the performance of this phone, you probably won't have any problems with. It's definitely not slow at all. The only thing I could see yourself kind of being upset with maybe is the software version that it's on. Because of that, it's not necessarily the fastest thing out there. Android Pie kind of optimized it a little bit more. But what I can tell you is that even if you just kept it as it is on stock TouchWiz, on stock Android Oreo, you will not have many problems with this device in terms of performance. Now, depending on how you use your phone, Android kind of does allow a lot of apps to suck a lot of the background performance and a lot of the background memory, like Facebook and apps like that, huge ones that are just constantly running. Things like that tend to slow down your phone a lot. iOS kind of does a better job at it, I'll definitely be honest. But what I can say is that as long as you're kind of monitoring what you're doing and you're not like an extremely heavy user, you probably won't notice the glitch frames here and there or the slow animations sometimes. Even gaming and performance, I mean, I still think it's very, very good. Of course, you're going to get the occasional glitch frames. Sometimes it's going to be fast, sometimes it's going to be slow. But I would definitely say that the overall performance isn't horrible at all, man. I'm being dead honest. So I'll definitely give a thumbs up to the performance when you factor in the age of this phone and the price that it's at now. I mean, I wouldn't compare it to like the newest phones. I wouldn't say this phone is the best performing phone out there, but for the price, it's definitely respectable. Now switching to the camera, it has a single sensor on the back, which was pretty common in 2016. It has a 12 megapixel sensor, optical image stabilization, and I can definitely say that the camera on this thing is still very, very good. I find that with Samsung phones, they tend to, overexpose the photos, but in a good way. So if you take a photo, like let's say outside or even indoors and you have decent lighting, the photo will automatically up in the brightness of the exposure, and it'll definitely make the photo look much better than it really is. iOS doesn't necessarily do that well. LG, I feel like kind of darkens the image a little bit, but with Samsung, they do a really, really good job at smoothing the photo and making it look brighter than it is. Some people like that, some people don't. Me personally, I like that. So I'll definitely say that the photos this thing takes are definitely good. I don't have any complaints. You are able to shoot 4K at 30 frames per second and 1080p at up to 60 frames per second. That's probably my only complaint. I wish it did have more frame speeds you could film with, but considering this phone came out in 2016, what are you going to do? A lot of phones at that time were still shooting in 1080p. Some of the budget models were definitely shooting in 1080p. 4K in 2016 was definitely around. 4K in 2013 was probably around, but I really wish we could do at least 1080p at 120 frames per second. I'm never going to use it, but it's just one more selling point of the phone. It also has a 5 megapixel front facing camera. I personally didn't like it that much, I'll be honest. It's probably one of the weaker aspects of it, but really, I'm not a huge photographer. I don't really take photos that much. So I'll definitely say when you factor in the front camera and the back camera of this phone, it's definitely good. I don't have that many complaints with it, I'm being honest. Now moving on to the battery life, this is probably the best part of this phone. It has a 3600 mAh battery, and I really wish every single phone out there could have a 3600 mAh battery. The fact that this phone isn't even that thick, it's definitely big because it's a bigger phone, but it doesn't even seem like that thick of a phone. It doesn't even seem like that bad of a phone at all. The battery life, considering that the phone had a huge 1440p screen, that it had 4 gigs of RAM and all these different things, the battery life was really, really solid. And it wasn't because the software optimized for it. It wasn't because of the screen was saving power. It was because of the size of the battery. And that's why I always say phone manufacturers need to go and increase the size of the batteries. Samsung did a tremendous job here at making it a 3600 mAh battery. Why can't phone manufacturers now just go release a phone with more battery size or bigger battery size and we can all be happy? It makes no sense. All the phones are trying to be slimmer and thinner and all these things. Man, we just want like a phone with a bigger battery, man. What more do we want, you know? So I'll definitely say that the battery life on this phone is definitely good, and the battery size of this phone is definitely good as well. Now, some other notable things to note, like I said, the front home button does have a fingerprint sensor. I don't know if I said that in the beginning, but it's definitely important to note. This thing is also IP68 dust and water resistant. It actually said dust and water proof. You can dip your phone 1.5 meters for 30 minutes, so that's definitely an interesting thing. The screen is super awesome. I like it a lot. A huge thing I forgot to hit on as well, that it has a micro SD card slot. So this thing came in a couple different variants of sizes, 32, 64, and 128 gigs. But what you can always do is just get the base 32 gig model and just go get a micro SD card slot and just literally just ball out that way. Instead of spending more on the bigger storage model, you can just spend less and get a micro SD card slot. I think you guys know how numbers work, so I don't think I need to explain that. And another probably minor complaint is probably the speaker. It's not the greatest thing in the world. But again, factoring in this price of this phone and the time it was released, and even the fact that it still has a headphone jack, those things are pretty important, man. Now, I also kind of want to hit out the price of this phone right now. So before, it was actually selling for, I'll definitely say, around the $200 mark up until last year. But now I've actually seen these phones hit a kind of a price drop within the last year especially. And you can get them for around the $140 mark. If you go on eBay or Craigslist, those are definitely the cheapest options you can get. They're not usually in the best quality. Sometimes there's things wrong with them. Sometimes, I'm not gonna say all the time, but sometimes there might be. So definitely you pay what you get for in the phone market especially. So $140 would probably be the base you'll probably set, or the average. Of course, there's going to be some lower than that. So there's going to be some more expensive than that. That's probably the average you're going to be paying. So is the Galaxy S7 Edge still worth it in 2019? I will say, man, if you're in the market for a phone you don't plan on keeping for too long, like if you want to keep it for a couple months, you just want to test the waters of Android, you want a pretty decent performing phone, or you want a work phone or something like that, I would honestly recommend this thing, man. You have an awesome screen, awesome build quality, great battery life. There's really not too much to complain about this thing besides the software updates. That's probably the only thing where I draw the line at. A phone can be the best performing phone ever and has this and have that, but if the software is outdated, that kind of, makes the phone outdated a bit too, more than it should be. I think the hardware is really good. I think this phone is still performance heavy, but I think when it comes down to the features and the security of your phone, you might be better off honestly looking at like a Google Pixel, the first one that came out. That thing is also kind of done with support too, but that one got at least a year of support more than the Galaxy S7 Edge did. So that's probably the cheapest option around that point, but you can always get this phone and always throw a custom ROM at it as well. Some variants you can do that. So like I said, that's always an option, but so really there's a couple ways you can go wrong with this phone in software, but if you really want it, there's really nothing that lures me away to it. Like the software is the only thing. So like I said, you can get them on eBay and Craigslist for pretty cheap, but I'd always recommend getting certified refurbished because they always come with a warranty. They're super easy to get, and I always link them through Amazon. So if you have an Amazon account, you can just go on Amazon.com and buy them. So what I'll do is I'll link the cheapest Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, the certified refurbished one that I find, in the description below, but I'll also find the cheapest Google Pixel that I find on Amazon, and I'll also leave that link down below too. So you have some choices there. I'll definitely be dropping a Google Pixel review in 2019 very soon as well, so keep it locked down on the channel there. And like I mentioned before, if you purchase things through those links in the description, a little bit of percentage comes back to the channel, and it actually helps us do more giveaways and do more videos like this. So we'd really appreciate if you guys, not only buy the phones there, but also buy anything if you want to. Just purchase it through those links. It costs you no extra money and just comes back to the channel. We can do crazier and better things basically. So that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out, but more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.